Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Tonight, I wanted to talk a little bit about Pope Francis's funeral church choice. He has a long history with St. Mary Major, which is actually outside of the Vatican, 2 or 3 miles east. It was founded in the 400s, and it was very special to him. I got a lot of this information from the New York Times, also from the National Catholic Register, for anyone who's interested. But he spent part of his very first day when he was named Pope praying at this ancient papal basilica, and he began and ended every papal trip with a visit to this church. He's been there over 100 times, and also every hospital visit he would end with, when he'd get out of the hospital, he would stop by St. Mary Major to pray. And he did his most recent hospital release as well back on March 23rd. It said he stayed in the car, wasn't able to get out of it, but he did want to make a point to stop by this church. And it just meant a lot to him, the ancientness of it and his devotion to Mary. It was a big deal to him. Most of the popes, well over 100 of the 266 that have died, are buried in various incarnations of St. Peter's Basilica, always on the same site, but there have been multiple churches built there. So that's where most of them are buried, or more there than anywhere else. But he will be I believe, the 8th Pope to be buried at St. Mary Major, and he didn't want it to be a big deal. He didn't want it to be a big ornate coffin. He reworked some of the burial details for his own burial over the past year or so. Just very specific where he wanted to be buried, what kind of coffin, didn't want it to be as fancy of a coffin as popes usually get. Just a humble man, and that is why he was so beloved. I was reading the last one to be buried at this church, at this St. Mary Major, was a guy named Pope Clement the Ninth, over 350 years ago, died in 1669. He only was Pope for less than 2.5 years, but just quickly became famous among Romans for... It says, during that time, he won the affection of Romans by giving to the poor, visiting hospitals, hearing confessions twice a week for anyone who came, and this is the big one, refusing to enrich his own family or allow his name to be put on buildings. So even though he was only Pope for under 2.5 years, there was a Catholic Encyclopedia article in 1908 that said Romans considered him, if not the greatest, then at least the most amiable of popes. This is why we love this guy. And no knock on Benedict, but he was not known for, for the same things that Pope Francis is known for. He was more known for his theology and his cultivated love of the arts, particularly music, but all kinds of arts. Just a brilliantly educated man, and really saw all art, Benedict XVI did, as coming directly from God. He created us to ourselves create. And he dedicated his life to studying theology, studying the Word of God, and all of the Apostolic Fathers and all of these scholars and theologians throughout the ages. He wanted to understand the Word of God, what it was and what it meant. He was irreplaceable in his own way, and that's not what Pope Francis is known for. Pope Francis is known for his humility, his taking stands on behalf of what he thought Jesus would do in this day and age. No one can know that for sure, of course. But as Jesus himself was, this was a controversial pope. I can't explain that. People, liberals, progressives, conservatives within the Catholic Church. There are these factions, just like there are in any political arena. And why the conservatives, who would presumably be the most, I don't know, you would just that term, you would think they're the oldest, they're the most kind of true to the original word because they're conserving it, they're not changing it. Those are the ones who, I don't know, don't, in my reading anyway, don't seem as much to get the reading of Jesus's life and actions as well as someone like Pope Francis did. When you ask yourself, what would Jesus do in this situation? Picture him with a refugee, with a migrant, with a homeless person, with a a gay person, all the, it's hard for me to even acknowledge what these controversies are. Like, he was controversial because he wanted everyone to accept migrants. Like, what universe would Christians not be accepting and accommodating of migrants? But that's controversial. Accepting of lifestyles, of sexual preferences, in his view, the way God created these people. So who's going to question the way God created someone? In his own words, who am I to question? That was a huge controversy when he said that. And it remained. And in every newscast you see now talking about controversies, that gets brought up. Who am I to judge? I don't know. He's just a guy that seemed to get it in the way that Jesus wanted us all to get it. And that was Francis's prayer for us, that we would continue to forgive everyone and be merciful ourselves. Be as infinite in our own mercy towards others as Jesus was and is in his mercy for us. And Pope Francis certainly was that. And that's what we ought to all strive for. Leave the judgment out of it. Leave the rejection, the hatred or the disapproval out of it, and accept people for who they are and what they are. If you are someone who believes that God created all of us, that's how God created us. That's how God created this person or that person. And it's not really up to us to know why, or in my opinion, even ask why or wonder why. I don't question that kind of thing. It is the way it is, and I accept that. And Pope Francis did too. And I think it's a fitting choice for St. Mary Major for him to be buried under. And the funeral will be at 10 a.m. Saturday morning, Rome time. And then the 9 days of mourning starts after that. And then they will get rolling with the conclave following those 9 days of mourning. So it's all coming together. And for now, I think this is just still remaining a time to reflect on all that Pope Francis was and all he believed in and all he stood for and all he wanted for all of us, because it is nothing but good and goodness. So that's a good note to end on, I think, tonight. And I hope you all have a good evening, a good day tomorrow, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.